to Tracy Momi Reads. I am back with another book review. My apologies for not posting last week. It was spring break and time just got away from me. Not to mention I'm deep into finishing up the second issue of the Face of 50 Plus magazine. But that's neither here nor there. You came here for a book review, and that's what we're going to discuss today. And so the book that I'm going to be talking about today, I'm excited about because it kind of goes in line with Women's History Month, because it is a collection of short stories in an anthology called Out of Line. And so the thing that caught my eye with this anthology is two of the authors that are on there. They're not typically authors that you associate with like fiction writing, Cheryl Strayed and Roxane Gay. But all of the stories in the collection, they are fictional stories. And they are stories also that they kind of talk to the female experience or the experience of women in relationships, in motherhood, in the workplace, and in the world, just in society in general. And there's like some satire, dark humor, just some really cerebral things to make you think about women in society and how others view us in society. And, all the things from the political stuff that's going on with trying to regulate women's bodies, to marriage and, like I said, education, just so much stuff. Yeah, and there are 7 stories in the collection, and I have finished 6 of them. And I will tell you that although, I've always said this, that I'm not a big fan of, audiobooks, the stories are incredibly short. So one of them I did listen to when I was, out walking on the trail at the park, and it was only like 35-40 minutes long. And they have some great narrators that are narrating these books. So listening to it, it was a short, presentation, and then engaging narrators, like well-known narrators, celebrities. It just made it more interesting. Like I think Samira Wiley, from The Handmaid's Tale, she did one of them. Gwendolyn Christie from Game of Thrones, and Kristen Bell, from Veronica Mars and Frozen. She read one of them. So from that standpoint, I feel like, that raised the bar on the audio experience. But anyway, I'll just tell you like a few of my favorite stories that were in the collection that I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed Cheryl Strayed's story. Hers was called This Telling, and this one kind of centered around reproductive rights. So it focused on a girl who in 1964, this girl named Geraldine, she was going to, she found she was pregnant, and she was like a teen, I think like 17 or something. And she goes to this man who's going to give her an abortion, but he was a doctor, but because it was illegal, he was going to like do it in his garage, him and his wife. It was just real sketchy. But anyway, she ended up deciding not to do that. And then when she told her parents, because the guy, he ended up being shipped off to Vietnam, her boyfriend at the time. And when she told her parents, they sent her to a home for unwed mothers, where basically you carry the baby to term, and when you give birth, they give the baby away, give it up for adoption. So anyway, she goes on to have a long life, gets married, becomes a widow. She has her own kids. And in the end, it's like she's kind of reunited with her granddaughter. But even though those sound like spoilers, it's not about what happens so much. It's just the way that the story is told and some of the elements that Cheryl Strayed used to kind of bring the story full circle. So it was a very gripping story. And like I said, I want to say the whole thing is probably maybe 40 pages or something like that. So that's the other thing that I found so intriguing, is that these women were able to tell such impactful stories in such a short amount of time. I mean, most of the time, like I've said before about short stories, it's kind of hard to really feel for the characters. It's kind of hard to really get into the story because it's all kind of told at a point in time, when you do like a novella or a short story, because there isn't a lot of time for character development and, plot twists and all this kind of stuff. But in that short amount of time, she was able to just kind of encapsulate the experience of this young girl who, you know, found herself in this predicament, and there was nowhere for her to turn because it was illegal. And then even going to her parents, they still made a decision for her. So she like didn't really have agency over her own body or over her own decisions. And it was told really beautiful story. So this telling was one that I really enjoyed. And then Roxane Gay, hers was called Graceful Burdens. And I thought it was so ironic that Samira Wiley was the narrator of the story, because it was giving me very much Handmaid's Tale vibes. This story was about like a future society where like you had to be approved by the government to be able to have children, and you had to like have all of the perfect traits. Like they were trying to create like Stepford families basically. You had to have, you know, hit all these boxes with your IQ, with your family background, your genetics, your financial situation, and then you got a license to have children, and only men with licenses and women with licenses could have children. Everybody else is like, you can't have any children. And if you did end up having children, because that's going to happen, like there are going to be some people that rebel against all the bullshit, right? Then the women, they had to give, like, you couldn't keep your kid. You had to, like, your child got taken away from you. And they had these libraries where the babies would go, and other women who couldn't have, they could have kids, it was just illegal for them to have them. These other women who didn't have a license to have children, they could check out or borrow a baby for up to 2 weeks, very much like how you would do a book. And just so that they could have the experience of motherhood for that short period of time. And it was wild. Just the way that they had that set up, and how it eerily kind of mimics just little things that you see kind of happening in society today. And when you read stories like that, even though it's figments of the author's imagination, and you think, oh, this could never happen, in the back of your mind you're kind of like, well, could it? If the government goes unchecked for so long, I feel like, anything could be possible. But this story had a good ending in that it was kind of like a twist in this one, with what was going on with, one of the women who rented one of the babies, and what happened with that baby. So I won't give that away, but that was my favorite story in there, Graceful Burdens by Roxane Gay. Very good story. And again, she was able to do so much in such, we're talking, all these stories are under 100 pages. So very, very quick to get through, whether you read them or listen to them, the audio versions. You'd be able to read the entire collection as if it were just one big book. Two others that I want to mention real quick: The Contractors by Lisa Ko. And this one was kind of like women in the workplace. And it spoke to not only like pay inequality, but there were these two women. One was in, America, and one was in, I believe, the Philippines or Thailand. And so they had the same name, and there was some kind of mix up, and they ended up kind of becoming friends and communicating, but they worked for the same company. And they kind of found out, some things that were going on internally. And while this one woman, overseas, thought that she had such a great job and she was making all this money and doing all this stuff, the other woman who was making more than her, it wasn't even enough to pay her bills all the way. And they just kind of start talking about, how much their male counterparts were getting, and what the expectations were in companies in the US versus the companies, where the other woman was. And the whole like political, thing around that. So that one was another very good story. And how one of the women kind of sacrificed herself for the other one. So it was really good. That was a really, really good story as well. And the last one that I wanted to mention was Sweet Virginia by Caroline Kepnes. And this one, it was the longest one so far, but this one was about this woman. She was married and had a young, like an infant. Like, I think she gave birth, like in the story, it talked about her giving birth, and then the baby was a few months old. But she was just so disenchanted with her life. She was kind of addicted to watching Lifetime movies, or Hallmark movies. And she wished she had like a perfect life like that. She was an aspiring yet fledgling, writer. She had a job at a magazine that, she got fired from because she pitched an awful idea. Her husband, I think he was like a lawyer. Her mother came to help out with the baby. The thing that I found ironic about this story, she essentially was living the same life as these women that you see in the Hallmark movies and Lifetime movies, but it wasn't enough for her, And so there's this like crazy twist that kind of happens with her actually going to see that the grass isn't really greener on the other side. And I can't remember who the audio narrator was. Oh, it was by Kristen Bell. I made a note there. Kristen Bell. She did an incredible job with that because she kind of has like that dark sense of humor, and her quirkiness, like her voice when you listen to it, you can kind of imagine the mannerisms and everything going along with it. But yeah, like I said, the entire collection just phenomenal, amazing stories. Kept you engaged. And I know I read a few of the comments, and I know a lot of people, like I've said this over and over about short stories and novellas, you have to kind of bring your expectations down when it comes to getting full character development, backstories, like these plots that you can ride out and these stories that give you so much background and information. We're getting to the action a lot quicker, and you have to kind of let your imagination fill in those blanks. But like I said, if you're into stories, like short stories, stories that have some parallel to real life, stories with, dark humor, stories with women as the main characters and heroines, then you will absolutely love this collection of stories. And again, it's called Out of Line Stories Collection, and they're all Amazon originals. So I think that is the only way that you'd be able to read them is on a Kindle, or you don't have to have an actual Kindle device per se, but you would need like the Kindle reading app or something like that. So what I'll do on the star rating, I'm just like overall, as opposed to like each individual book that I read in the collection. Overall, I would give it 4 stars, 4 out of 5 stars, because like I said, I was really impressed, especially with Cheryl Strayed and Roxane Gay's stories, because I've never read any like fictional books from either of them. And I feel like they did a really good job going into, delving into that genre. And, it was different from books that I've read by either of them. So there you have it. Out of Line Stories Collection, Amazon Originals. Perfect read for Women's History Month or any month. So anyway, if you have read the Out of Line story collections, I would love to know your thoughts on that and which story was your favorite. Let me know in the comments, and go ahead and subscribe to my channel. We're getting those numbers up there, guys. I really appreciate everyone who's already subscribed. Thank you, thank you, thank you so very much. You guys have a great weekend. See you next time. Bye.